Feel the power.
Welcome to the January 23rd, 2023 Ann Arbor District Library Board meeting, which I am now calling to order. So the first order of business today is we are swearing in our newly elected trustees with the Honorable Miriam Perry.
Good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Will the three trustees stand? Okay, raise your right hand. And then just repeat after me. There's going to be a time where I'll say I, and then you put your name, and then repeat after me. So I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
Do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office. I'll start there.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
Of member of the District Board, of the District Library Board,
of member of the District Library Board
of the Ann Arbor District Library,
of the Ann Arbor District Library,
Washtenaw County,
Washtenaw County,
Michigan, according to the best of my ability.
Michigan, according to the best of my ability.
All right. You can lower your hand. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you just have the three of you right by the podium, just a picture for social?
Absolutely.
Oh. Stand right beside it. Right there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Wonderful. Thank you
All right.
very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Nice meeting everyone.
Good luck with your jet lag.
All right, thank you, Judge Perry. Welcome to our returning trustee, Leha, and our new trustees, Sova and Hadley. We're excited to have you on board. All right, so have we taken attendance?
Yeah.
Thank you. And the next order of business is the election of the library board officers.
I would like to nominate Scott Trudeau as president.
Second.
I will accept the nomination.
This is very loud.
So is this
Any other nominees?
is there any other nominees? Yeah. And is this a voice?
This is a roll call vote that Karen will administer.
Okay, great.
Trustee Hadley.
Yes.
Trustee Kleinman is not here yet. Trustee Leha.
Yes.
Trustee Solomon.
Yes.
Trustee Sova.
Yes.
Trustee Trudeau.
Yes.
Can't abstain from.
Yes.
Trustee Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Another quirk of our bylaws is that you cannot abstain from voting when you are in the Ann Arbor District Library. You must vote yes or no.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. That is successful.
Yes. So do we have any nominations for vice president?
I nominate Molly Kleinman.
I second that nomination. Oh, there she is.
Dramatic entrance. Okay, any other nominations? All right, that'll be another roll call vote with Trustee Kleinman now in attendance.
Trustee Hadley.
Yes.
Trustee Kleinman.
Yes.
Trustee Leha.
Yes.
Trustee Solomon.
Yes.
Trustee Sova.
Yes.
Trustee Trudeau.
Yes.
Trustee Vanderbilt.
Yes.
All right, and do we have any nominations for treasurer?
I would like to nominate Anna Solomon.
I will second that. Are there any other nominations? Oh, can I second that if I'm the chair?
Yes, you
Okay.
can.
All right, another roll call vote.
Trustee Hadley.
Yes.
Trustee Kleinman,
Yes.
Trustee Leon,
Yes.
Trustee Solomon,
Yes.
Trustee Silva,
Yes.
Trustee Trudeau,
Yes.
Trustee Vandermark.
Yes.
And that is another unanimous vote. And do we have any nominations for secretary?
I'd like to nominate Aiden Sova for secretary.
I'll second that nomination.
Are there any other nominations? All right, and another roll call vote, please.
Yes. Yes.
Trustee Leon,
Yes.
Trustee Solomon,
Yes.
Trustee Silva,
Yes.
Trustee Trudeau,
Yes.
Trustee Vandermark.
Yes.
All right, another successful vote there. Thank you all. We have a new executive team of officers. All right, the next item is to install the officers. So we have another swearing in. Who leads this?
This you just say this.
We just all say this?
And you can do it all together.
Okay. You all ready to go?
On the count of
All
three.
right. I,
Aiden Sova, do solemnly swear that I will abide by the bylaws, rules, and regulations of my office as to the best of my ability.
good job staying in sync.
It was a lot harder on Zoom.
Oh, yes.
That's right.
Right?
I can't imagine those days.
All right, and then we relinquish control to new officers. So I was treasurer, now I'm president, so I will stay here. And now, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, any amendments or changes? All right, and is this a voice vote, or is this for the agenda?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the agenda is approved. The next item is the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
All right, so if all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, that sounds like everybody. So the consent agenda is approved.
Just point of process, Scott, to
Yeah.
call for discussion
Oh.
for resolutions.
Okay.
As a reminder, you'll get there.
Thank you. Appreciate.
Like we all do.
I appreciate the tips, President Emeritus. All right, do we have any citizens' comments?
Me neither.
All right, does anybody in the audience want to comment? Okay. So that brings us to the financial reports.
Okay.
Director Nieberger?
All right, so the financial reports, because we did not meet in December, you've got both the November and the December financial reports in here. I'm only going to talk about the December ones because that is the most recent picture of our accounting. So that begins on page 42 of your packet. So just to walk through this quickly, so our cash decreased $1.3 million from November to December. So what we would expect this time of year because we received almost all of our revenue from the tax disbursements from the county and the townships. So this is the time of year when we are spending as opposed to accruing. So if you look at the tax receipts line, we have now received 100.47% of our budgeted tax receipts. That's great for this time of year because they will continue to trickle in. While everybody who paid on time, we've already received all that, they continue to trickle in. So what this means is that we'll probably hit 101, 102% of our budgeted tax revenue. So that means our estimates were conservative as we like them to be, and so we're in a good position as far as our main source of revenue for the next year. If you look at our fund balance activity, our general fund balance, which is the free balance in essence that the board members have the ability to, that is not already committed to other projects, that increased from $6.2 million at the end of November to $6.6 million at the end of December. That's what this chart shows here. You can see back in July and August, that was when we transferred money into, this was in 2021, transferred money into our account to be able to purchase a warehouse. Then you saw we purchased it as that chart falls significantly. And then we put some money into the capital fund to be able to pay for construction at that warehouse. We'll talk more about that in future meetings. And then, as you'd expect, it starts creeping up and is resuming to climb throughout the year. So we're in a good position in terms of revenue and the fund balance. If you turn to page 43, just a few things to touch on here. If you look at expenditures, our expenditures so far, that 8.5 million is what our actual expenditures have been so far. 476,000, that's encumbrance, meaning that's what the things we've agreed to purchase but have not yet written the check for. 565,000 is prepaid. That's things like subscriptions that go across the entire year. Even though we pay them at the front of the year, the expense is realized as the year goes on. So that looks a little confusing, but it's all what we would expect this time of year. Now, one thing I want to draw your attention to, the bullet here, and I'll show this when we look at the statement of revenues, is that we did discover an error in the way we were booking payroll with our new accounting system that we just started using in July. So we made some adjustments to fix that, and we got that right going forward. But as a result, it looks like we spent a negative amount on benefits in December. That's just because we're making the adjustment to get caught up with the rest of the year. So that should be fixed from that time, and I'm sure we'll still discover a few more things that we're booking differently. We're just coming off of a system that we had been using for 20 years. So we're making a lot of adjustments to use the new accounting system. Our year-to-date revenues exceed expenses by 559,000. The primary reason for that is because we receive our revenue all at once, but it's broken up into 12 equal chunks for the purposes of cash flow realization. So, but that's good. It means that we are still receiving more money than we are expending. So we've received 50% of the approved budget, about what we would expect, and our expenses are 44% of the approved budget, which means we're spending less than our accrual, which is where we want to be this time of year. One thing to note here under grants and memorials, the Friends Donation Fund began the year with a balance of $10,000. The Friends are getting ready to give us money again for the first time since pre-pandemic. That's great to know, and we have a project coming up we may want to spend some of that money on. We'll be talking with the Friends Board and then talking with you all about that as well. And one other thing we wanted to mention here looking at the Westerman Fund, if you look at the Holtree and the Keniston Fund, those have corpuses that are permanently restricted by the donor. However, the Westerman Fund has a corpus that is restricted by the board, which means if you wanted to, you could choose to spend that down. So that was a note from our auditors about the way that we were talking about it. So we made an adjustment to the language that appears in this report to show that it is at the board's discretion that the $30,000 corpus is being held in that account. And if the board decided to spend it, we could spend it. It's not restricted by the donor.
Eli, when
Yes.
did that happen?
I'm sorry?
When was that?
The Westerman Fund? Geez.
Or I mean like the board action about it?
Oh, it was at least 10, 12 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
It was almost immediately after we had initially received the fund. It was part of like the board's initial decision to do that. And it was in a discussion with Scott Westerman, who had made the donation in honor of his wife.
Okay.
So, but it's been a long time, and there's certainly alternatives. It's not something that there's a need for, but it is an option that the board has.
Our option is to redesignate it towards another purpose, or would it be to spend down the corpus?
You could choose to
Or
spend
either.
down the corpus. It is not restricted by the donor.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So if you now turn to page 44, just that bottom line, literally our bottom line, the general fund amount, the capital fund balance, the restricted grants total, and the total of those three lines going across. Okay? Then if we look on page 45, this is what we pay the most attention to, actual revenues, expenditure, and changes. Thank you, Judge Perry. Have a nice evening. Just a few things to point out here. One thing that is, so we are now 50% through the year. So if you look at that last column, that tells you what percentage we are through that budget. So one thing of note is that the MIPSers, we've already received all of that. That's a pass-through where the state gives us money and then we give money back to the state. So it's a very unusual thing that's related to I think we still have 3 or 4 employees who worked here when we transferred over from the schools. So
Will you say what MIPSers
Yes,
is?
MIPSer stands for the Michigan Public Schools Employees Retirement System. Okay, so that is the state pension, actual real pensions. And we only have a few employees here who were covered by that. So as a result, there's some money that passes through. When the remaining employees have retired, that will no longer be a part of our budget. However, if you look at investment gains, for the first time in a long time, our investment gains is positive because as things are starting to even out with inflation, we're now seeing some gains on our investment as opposed to losses, which as we had been seeing, not actual losses, but paper losses because the real value of the bonds being affected by inflation in the marketplace. As a public library, we cannot invest in securities, we can only invest in bonds. So as a result, we really feel it when there's inflation in terms of our investments because it affects the real value of the bonds. So you can see for the year to date, we're still down, we're negative 25%. That does affect our overall revenue, but it's not a big part of the revenue. As you can see, we only budgeted to receive $25,000 for the entire year. It's the third column that shows the approved budget. You can see we've gotten a lot more than expected in grants, memorials, library fines, resident fees. Those are all well above the 50% that they would be if they were right online. But they're also extremely small amounts of money compared to the overall budget. But you can see total revenue, 49.92%, which means here halfway through the year, we've received half the revenue we budgeted to receive. So then when you look down the year-to-date percentage, the last column, anything that's above 50% means it's running a little bit ahead of where we'd like to be. Anything that's below 50% means we're running a little bit below where we'd want to be. We're in a good spot with salaries and wages. Benefits, even after that correction, is running a little hot, and it's something that we want to look at. It's a hard thing to predict because it depends on how benefits are utilized by the staff, but it's something that it's possible that may need an adjustment when we get to the end of the fiscal year, because it's possible that might finish a little higher than we had budgeted for. You can see that MIPSR's pass-through, that's mostly because it's all already happened this year. The full amount that we received has pretty much already happened. Other things of note, accounting and audit, just a little bit above, but the audit has already been paid for, and that is the major expense in that line. Similarly, materials, right where we want to be, just a little bit above 50%. We don't want that one to lag behind because of the nature of accounting with the time it takes to receive books. We generally don't order a lot of books in the last month of the fiscal year because if they arrive, it makes a big accounting headache. If we order them in one fiscal year and they arrive in the next fiscal year. So ordering slows way down in June, so we want to see that a little bit ahead because we basically want to get to 100% by the end of May. Similarly, copier expense is running above, but again, that's only $50,000 out of the budget. And one other thing of note, if you look at the very bottom line there, capital outlay, we've only spent 10% of that, mostly because we budgeted there to be able to do a lot of expenses for the warehouse, and we're held up on construction permitting, so we're not able to spend most of that. Then if you look at revenue over expenditures, the third line from the bottom says just over $1 million surplus at this point. And you can see that is mostly unspent money from the capital outlays line. We always have the option when we get to the end of the fiscal year to take any overage and put it into the capital fund. Capital fund does not disappear. None of the money actually disappears, but our appropriations end sharply on June 30th. The capital fund is a way to bridge over that. So if it turns out that we have appropriated this money to buy equipment at the warehouse, which we call the plaza. If you hear me say the plaza, it's because the address is Parkland Plaza. So when we get to the end of the fiscal year, we can take some of that money and put it into the capital fund and then continue to spend it on what it was intended for, as opposed to it just becoming part of the fund balance. All right, so that's a whirlwind tour of the finances. Please, new trustees, do not hesitate to ask any questions that you have, either now or later. Always happy to answer. But there's a lot of weird things about municipal finance that don't make sense when you look at them off the cuff. Any questions?
All right, thanks for that.
Thank you.
And moving right along to the library report.
All right. So let me get this back up on the screen. Okay. So here's our monthly report for January of 2023. First, our stat of the month. This is door count by location. Downtown is red, and Westgate is orange, and Mallett's Creek is green, and Traverwood is yellow, and Pittsfield is blue. Who can see the day of Tiny Expo on this chart? Tiny Expo had 5,299 attendees through the door that day. That's not just a record for Tiny Expo. That is the highest door count we have ever recorded at the downtown library. So that is the busiest day we have ever had. So we definitely know that people want to come back to events, and we're getting a lot of attendees for big events, and that one made the y-axis of the chart was all messed up for a whole month as a result of that. And now we're back to, but you can also see from looking at this chart, it's a very typical sort of state that downtown and Westgate have a very steady and roughly equivalent amount of door count day over day. And then each of the branches, the 3 smaller branches, Mallett's, Pittsfield, and Traverwood, each have very similar amounts of traffic to them as well, a little bit more day by day. All right, another stat we want to talk about is that we were named a 5-star library by Library Journal for the 15th year in a row. We are one of just 2 libraries in the country to have earned this 5-star designation in each of the last 15 years since they started doing this. What's great about this is that these metrics are solely measuring how much the library is used. It's not about resources, other than that they break them up into categories by budget class. We're in the 2nd highest budget class. But this is based on 8 per capita metrics, so they adjust them for the size of your service population. Physical circulation transactions, which means checkouts and renewals. Digital circulation transactions, which means ebooks, and also we count downloads of our directly licensed materials in that. So in addition to the Overdrive ebooks, it's also all the videos that we've licensed independently, all that stuff as well. Door count, event attendance, number of public computing sessions. This is way down since the pandemic. Really, we used to have wait lists, and we never have a wait list anymore. Something that changed, a big inflection point there. Wi-Fi sessions, that's something that's way up. There's a lot of variance in how places count that. E-retrievals, which still nobody quite knows what that means. They have some rules that they want to count, but this data comes from the state aid reports that all libraries submit. And then that's compiled by the Institute for Museum and Library Services into what's called the Public Library Survey. And then that's what drives these results. And then website visits are on there as well. One thing that's unique about this is that different states have different fiscal years. So it's not really apples to oranges, because in some states they're not reporting over the same time period as we report here in Michigan. I think 37 of the 50 states use the same fiscal year as we do, which is July 1 to June 30th. But there's some other that are doing calendar year. Normally doesn't make any difference. But when we get to pandemic year, it's going to make a big difference. Particularly because this data is based on the fiscal year 2020 data. That's how far behind this lags. Wow. So this data ends June 30th of 2020, all right? So the next year is going to be very interesting, because that's going to be the year where there was a lot of divergence in the ways the different libraries handled the year between summer of 2020 and summer of 2021, right? So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think it is certainly possible it'll be our first year where we're not a 5-star library, because we reacted to it differently than a lot of other places did. So that's just something that is in the mix, setting expectations, as it were, because there's a lot of different things in this data. And it's a wonderful thing that we've had all these years, but it is really just a measurement of the love that this community has for its library and the extent to which they use it. There are things that we are the highest, some of these metrics were the highest in the country by far. So it's great to see that, and thanks to all of our patrons for making that possible all these years.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a place where we can see some of the comparisons across?
Yes, I will send that out afterwards. They have it all straight up on their website.
Is one of the ones where we're the highest website visits?
Yeah, we're pretty high. We're not as much of an outlier there, but we are, there are some libraries in our budget class that we have 10 times the traffic that they do.
I feel like Summer Game has got
Summer Game, absolutely. Yeah, that's very much the special sauce.
I just will not allow you to undersell the wonderfulness of this and the work of the staff and at providing services that are relevant, that people want to use.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to say that.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Okay, some other upcoming events here. January 29th from 1 to 4 p.m. It's the return of the Preschool Expo. We had it online last year, so this is the first time back in person, if I recall correctly. And this is a super great event that sort of grew out of demand from the community. It's basically how you can shop for preschools. And it makes it really easy to see a lot of preschools very quickly. The preschools love it. The parents love it. It's a great thing at the downtown library. So this is a really great event that's coming up January 29th, next weekend, from 1 to 4 p.m. Also, the Washtenaw Read is getting underway, and we will have the author, Kylie Reed, will be here in the downtown library February 5th from 4 to 6 p.m. That's a Sunday. This is the highlight event. She'll talk about her book, Such a Fun Age. We'll be streaming that event live, and we have a recording that you can watch through February 12th, and then it will disappear. And this is something we're seeing increasingly in the Zoom age with presenters. Many of them make their living from these presentations. And while we have an interest in having it available permanently, the presenter in many cases wants there to be a limited window when it is available. So that works out just fine for us, so that is the case for this event. And this is a new festival for us. For the first time, we're trying the Ann Arbor Fiber Arts Expo. And this is coming up February 12th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the downtown library. It's all about knitting, crocheting, weaving, spinning, and so much more. We'll have some drop-in activities for little kids, as well as things for fiber artists and experienced crafters and crocheters. We'll have vendors. There'll be a vendor fair, patterns and books. We've recently been donated a floor loom, and we will have that set up so people can have a try at sending the shuttle back and forth, so to speak. And so that should be a very cool event. I anticipate that this will be something we will do every year because I think this is probably going to be a slam dunk for this community. So I'm looking forward to that event coming up on February 12th. Here's a podcast milestone. We want to let you know one of our staff podcasts, which is called Presenting Alfred Hitchcock Presents, which goes episode by episode through every single episode. And they recently passed the 50th episode. Wow. Not the 50th episode of the podcast, because it's actually the 57th episode of the podcast, because some of the episodes of the show require more than one podcast episode to cover. So they have now reached the 50th episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And this is a terrific show. It's one of the things that we hear the most about from people outside the community, Hitchcock fans from all around the world. And so this is the production of Al Scherdzma, who's also a playwright, one of our longtime staffers here, and often features AADL's Amy Cantu from the archives. And it's a deep dive into every single episode. They go episode by episode. I confess I listened to a very similar podcast, but it's about the Muppet Show. All right, here's our staff spotlight for this month. This is Mary Locke Pena. She is a bookshelver and processor. She currently works at the Westgate branch. She's been with us for 7 years now. And what she wishes people knew about her, this is her quote. "I've been working in libraries since I was young and went to work with my dad, who was a media specialist at a middle school. A library position was my first official job while I was in high school, so being at AADL is as natural as can be, a place I really enjoy working at." And we're very glad to have her on the team. Nice. All right, AADL in the community. If you haven't seen it yet, you want to be sure to check out the Selma to Montgomery mural, which is made out of Lego. It's in the lobby, and you just step into the lobby and look back toward the front doors to see it. And it's really amazing. It's 16,000 individually painted Lego pieces. The effect is outstanding. And the artist who created it, Aaron Liebman, will be giving a talk on next Saturday at 10 a.m. in the downtown lobby about that project. And it's very cool. We've been getting a lot of great feedback about that. And he brought a smaller, similar piece to the AADL Lego contest this past summer. And we contacted him and asked him if there was something that he might be interested in exhibiting around the time of MLK Day. And so I believe he created this piece for this venue. And so it'll be up for a while, and then it's going back to him, and then we'll see what happens next. Also on the community, recently, it's about 2 weeks ago, we were featured on a segment on Channel 4's Live in the D morning show. Our associate director, Charlania Zobel, joined the host, Meredith Bruckner, who's also the editor of All About Ann Arbor. On set to talk about everything we have to offer, plus our 5-star rating. We showed off a bunch of tools. We showed off some of the t-shirts from the summer game, art prints, ukuleles. I see giant Jenga in there, the Blipbox kids synthesizer, and some puzzles, telescope, all kinds of stuff. So thank you, Shalanya, for doing that for us. I will say it's very interesting to us how little we hear about it when we appear on television in the Detroit market. Very little. I think the individuals hear about it from their families, but as an institution, it's like it didn't happen. It's very interesting how, sort of our media desert element there. And here's our mention of the month from someone on Twitter. Quick stop at AADL Mallett's Creek branch. Charge up after riding at the BSA shop. Clearly doing the Conquer the Cold challenge and charging up their e-bike battery in the cafe at Mallett's Creek before heading off to the rest of their ride. That was just a couple weeks ago. Now, we always like to do a complaint and a compliment. I decided we'd do the complaint first because we can end with the compliment. So here's our complaint of the month. Hi there, thank you for being such a great library system. A lot of our complaints begin this way. I live near and use the Traverwood branch. There's a light shining up in the flagpole near the parking lot. It's very, very bright. When I drive past, it's like someone has their high beams on. Also, walking in the evening past is very inconvenient and eye-pulsingly bright. Could you consider a different lighting system for the flagpole that does not create a safety hazard for drivers, nor an eyesore for walkers and patrons going to the parking lot? Thank you. So we received this right at the end of November. As you may know, if you have flags in municipal buildings and you're not going to take them down, they are required to be lit. So we looked at the lighting system. We were able to adjust the lights that are mounted on the building to point them up higher so they shouldn't be getting in the eyes of any drivers or people walking by. And after we tested, it seems like that was much resolved. But this is we have to dig pretty deep to find complaints. And this is what we were able to find. Compliment of the month. A patron expressed her deep appreciation for the library, her love for the Mounts Creek branch in particular, and her deepest thanks for the warm and professional service she received from staff here. The patron was struggling to print her credit reports, but Kit and Simone were able to provide her the help that she needed. She wanted to make sure managers and directors knew of her great experience. I thanked her for her kind words, and she said, "I'll be back tomorrow." And that was a service alert where staff can submit things that patrons have said across the desk. That was back on January 11th. Thank you to Kit and Simone for giving excellent service to this patron. And that's it for my report. Any questions?
All right, thanks, Eli.
Thank you.
I had one. I'm sorry. I had
Oh,
one
sorry,
question.
Jim. Yeah.
I was wondering about, because I've also been thinking about that sort of kind of digital rights management with those talks that you're doing. You're doing uniquely here. If you are negotiating like an archival permission potentially, as in like, would you want to archive the talk and then negotiate a set of circumstances under which like a researcher in the future could view it, so it would exist, but it would not be accessible to the broad public, or it would have some sort of like 50-year seal on it or something?
We have asked about that specifically, especially when something is of a strong local interest. We always try to get something along those lines. It really depends on where the presenter is at with that kind of thing. But it is definitely the case that we will do multi-year embargoes of content. We have the archives in the past. They did some interviews with some of the people back when we were doing the Johnson Clare project around 2011 that have just now been released, because they wanted to wait until their grandchildren were old enough to hear what they were up to in the 60s. Yeah. So some of those things have been
smart.
So that's absolutely something we could do. We have the infrastructure for it. But generally, a lot of these questions, people are just, we always want to record it for accessibility reasons and access reasons. But it's something that increasingly, when someone's on a tour or on a circuit, it's been hard for us to get that permission. But we're definitely open to that sort of embargoed long-term for archival purpose. And really, it mostly depends on if it makes sense for us to be the people that are keeping that, particularly when it's someone who's like on a national tour.
Right. And they're maybe giving like some variation of the same talk several times. Yeah.
Actually, I have a quick question. For the preschool expo, are you gonna have anyone from the state talking about all the different grant programs, like the Women's Commission, anything like that?
Oh, I don't believe so. That's a great question. So it's very focused on just the preschools tabling.
Sure.
So I don't think that there are talks as part of that event, but that's a great idea and something that we should look into. So I'll pass that along. Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks very much.
All right, thanks, Eli. So moving on to new business. So our first item for discussion is approving the board meeting days for 2023. And it looks like on page 47 and 48 of the packet, we have some discussion of, or some information to help us kind of decide. And on page 48, we have a proposed list of dates. So this is kind of, this is the moment where we can kind of change how we think about when we set our meetings. The last time we made this change, we moved them to try to land on the last Monday of each month.
The fourth Monday.
The fourth Monday, sorry, thank you, Eli. The fourth Monday of each month. And so that's what this recommended list reflects, with a couple of adjustments and parents for holidays and other logistical things. So I guess I will open the floor to discussion, questions, suggestions, feedback on those dates. Have a minute to look at your calendars.
This already addresses the thing I had been watching for, which was the AAPS spring break week. So that's good.
Is anyone planning to do U of M trips?
I will be gone, so if you need a
I won't be.
quorum, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, is anyone else impacted by U of M break?
Not anymore. Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. That's awesome. Yeah, I think, Jim, if you're out, I think as long as the others can make it.
Well, I don't have to chair the meeting anymore, so.
No, we still need quorum. I think I will be gone on the April meeting, potentially, a conference. But I might be back by then.
Okay, sounds like that this set of dates will work.
Just give 2 more minutes.
Okay, Jim,
I'm
okay,
kind-
take your
I'm
time.
still
Yeah.
probing through here.
For my part, like I checked the dates ahead of time, so I know.
One other
They're
thing
gonna
to
work for me.
consider is
Yeah.
if one of these meetings, or in addition to one of these meetings, should be a retreat. We haven't
Yeah.
done that in some time.
Yeah.
But just, it's
Right.
something that you could choose to do. And you don't have to decide right now either.
So I think there are only 2 of us who've experienced a retreat. So what is it? Like, how is it different from a meeting?
It's a long board meeting that has a focus on discussion of something.
Okay.
In the past, they've been more or less focused. Sometimes a strategic planning year, it's very much about the strategic plan. Sometimes if there's a big public engagement process to be done, that'll be a part of it. But we haven't typically retreated very far. One time it was at Westgate Branch. So but it's really wide open. It can be whatever y'all would like it to be.
And they evolved. When I started and when Jim started, they were much more like this, like the whole time. And there would be an audience of sometimes a substantial group of people initially, like maybe like 30 people in the audience, but they would not be like included or spoken to.
Right.
So,
You would have the retreat in front of them.
right, because of the Open Meetings Act and because it's like also, potentially affects the work of several hundred people. So, and the community. So since like those times, it has evolved to be more like a retreat that you might have at work, but and including everyone in attendance and like mixing up groups and things like that and reporting out. But we retain this like Open Meetings Act issue where like it still has this kind of funky awkwardness of the sitting at the microphones, at least during part of it. But it is a little bit more like what I think you might plan for a work team with like whiteboarding and like, brainstorming and stuff like that.
We've worked with facilitators.
Yes,
as
essentially,
well.
I would say.
And so I think for the last couple, we worked with Bridgeport, who helped us develop strategic plans. And I think that like for the past 2 retreats, they were actual, if you were going to be there, whether you were a member of the board or the public or the staff or whatever, you were invited to participate in all of the activities. So it's an interesting exercise in community engagement and staff engagement too. But it is all still part of, our open meetings obligation.
And is it during the regular meeting time?
Well, no, so we kind of adjusted that. I think they used to more or less force us all to take a day off of work, and then we kind of adjusted that a little bit to have it be just a part of a day off of work, like kind of like a 3 to...
Like a half day kind of thing.
Maybe like 3 to 7 kind of thing.
Like mid-afternoon into the evening.
They've always been held within the district, like not always in a library, but I mean, I think we had the pandemic, and then last year we were hiring Eli, so we've kind of had a lot of distractions from thinking about the board retreat, so maybe we should consider like what we would want to retreat about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the 2 of you are the only ones who've participated, right? Weren't.
I guess so, yeah.
I think so, yeah. That's
So weird.
Not to put you on the spot, but like, to put you on the spot, what aspects of it did you find helpful? Like, what aspects of it did you think weren't as helpful? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if this is the right time to have this conversation, but like that, to me, it's like, if it sounds like it could be really beneficial, but it also sounds like there are aspects of it that felt strained or just awkward or like not as productive or...
Yeah, I think the awkwardness is only in that we all probably think of retreats as what you have at work when and it's often a retreat is like you're actually kind of pulling away from your various publics and kind of the...
Retreat.
Right. Right. So like in this case, there's no pulling away from. If you're going to do work like that, you have to be willing to do it, publicly. And so there are any number of, topics we could choose. I think like one of them was actually directly related to strategic planning at one point. I don't remember. It's been so. It's like
I
seems
know.
like such ancient history now. And it also is just sort of like the spirit of the board, and whether you're willing to like go there and be and share the space with other people and talk about issues. I think it can be really valuable as a kind of community engagement mechanism for the people that show up there.
I felt like it was way more awkward before.
Yes. Yeah.
I thought it was fine. It's just like there's this sort of clunkiness to it,
Yeah.
like that Jim just described. But it's nice. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you do it for so long that it doesn't feel as much like a TV production, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't think that we broadcast them either.
No.
So it's more like it's open in the sense that anyone may come to it, but it's not the whole time being recorded and on YouTube and stuff like that. So there's like opportunities to have small conversations with people.
Yeah, the way that it would be designed would not make it suitable really for like what we do here, where we have cameras all around us.
Right, because you're going into like small
Because
groups.
you're going
and,
to
like,
small
having
groups.
these-
You're doing
yeah.
it's facilitated. It's more of like more of a working in public working session. I think that there's probably like the executive committee could get together
Yeah, that's a
and
good idea.
kind of make this an agenda item to talk about, bring us back some options as a whole board of like which way this could go, and where we would want to devote our energies. I think the question is like for the schedule is like when, right? And it's more challenging to get all of us to find like a half day than, everyone's busy and working and whatnot. So I don't also know if you want to try to solve for that tonight, Scott and Eli, like the idea of holding a half day or putting a half day in this, in this calendar, and then we either use it or not.
We certainly could.
Yeah. I think the suggestion of having the executive committee discuss and bring back some options to the board is a good one, and it makes sense while we're all here to figure out the day we might hold if we decide to go forward. And we may decide this year we don't want to do that, but we may want to do that.
Yeah,
So
right.
that does make some sense. Going back just to the dates for the meetings, has everybody had a chance to check? Are we cool with the suggested dates? Okay, so it's really just finding.
Yeah, I think I may have a conflict in September, but that again, I don't think that's a very squishy possible conflict. So
Okay.
I wouldn't ask you to change it for me.
All right, and so for the retreat days, so the only thing I read in the guidance was that typically they're done in the first half of the year, or the first quarter of the year. So that would be between now and the end of March.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
If I may, I might suggest that
yeah.
we push it into the spring, especially since basically we're a brand
Yeah.
new board
Yeah.
today. So
Another option would be while they have typically happened in the first quarter, there's not any reason that they have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another option could be, because often we do cancel the August meeting because of lack of agenda. It could be that we hold the August date for a possible retreat. That's right at the end of August, August 28th. So that could be an optional date of a retreat, and we can determine after there's been some discussion if that's a regular board meeting or if the regular board meeting is canceled and we have to retreat instead, or neither.
Do we know yet if that's the first day of AAPS?
Let me find that out real quick. I don't think it would be.
Yeah, I don't think they've announced that yet.
Yeah, I think because that goes through their.
they don't. Yeah,
bargaining.
it comes later.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think they've done it.
but
Oh, you mean it hasn't been announced
It
yet?
hasn't been announced yet.
I'm checking U of M right now.
U of M starts that week, I think, on Tuesday.
No, it's Monday.
Is it Monday?
It's
Okay.
the 28th.
Yeah, the 28th. Okay.
It's possible.
yeah, it is possible. Like it's the week before Labor Day, and they've been
Yeah.
doing.
But AAPS doesn't start on a Monday usually. It starts
Yeah,
on a
they usually
Tuesday.
start on like a Tuesday or Wednesday. Yeah.
Well, the students
No.
don't usually start on that Monday.
yeah.
They started on Monday and they didn't have a Friday.
This year.
That's
That's what they
right.
did this year.
Yeah.
They messed me up so bad.
I
And
mean, I
then they
guess
didn't
I
have a
don't know.
It was like a 4-day weekend, the first,
Yeah,
because it was
That's
Labor
right.
Day
That's right.
weekend. I mean, the other thing that we could do is hold that for a retreat, and if it is the first day of school, we could move it a week earlier, or, you know what I mean, like, or a week later, or whatever, you know what I mean? We could rearrange. It doesn't have to be on a Monday, right? If we decide to have a retreat.
Right. No, it doesn't have to be a Monday. And also, like, I guess if they go to school, I'm not sure why I'm so concerned about the day.
Right, yeah. If we're here while they're in school, it's actually, that,
That
if I
actually
can get the
works.
time off work, which I should be able to do that. For me, that would be okay, but.
Sure, right, no,
Yeah,
that's
same.
true.
So the retreat would be 7:46 to 3:02 p.m.
We have to account for the buses not showing up on the first day and like all that stuff.
Yes, that stuff. Agree.
Yeah, because that very, very well could be the first day of school. But, yeah, again, it might not
If it's
matter.
cushioned enough within the school day, I don't see why it would be a problem, though.
10 to 2.
Yeah, exactly. But this does bring up the idea of having to take a day off of work. If you're in the community, you'd have to take the day off of work. Or if this first day of school is a day of putting out fires for your family, like, so maybe that's not the best day.
Yeah, I think we can wait and see.
That's true. Maybe we wait and see.
Yeah, I like, since we don't even know if we're going to want to do it yet, let's do it. Having a date held is good, and then we can go from there.
Yeah.
Does
I
that
mean,
sound good to everybody, or?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say I do like the idea of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can. I think if there isn't a time pressure to get it scheduled in the next 2 months, we can
Yeah,
do the executive committee and then regroup in a
Yeah.
month or two.
and I agree, trying to get it done in the first quarter is just too
No,
much,
that
too
feels
soon.
super stressful.
Yeah.
I do, since I won't be in that smaller group meeting, I want to also advocate for us doing it because we're a new group. I think we could use the time, and it takes a while. These are so formal that it we could use a little time to think together.
Hey, we don't need to do any motions for the meetings, or do we? We do. Okay, just for the meeting dates? Okay. Okay. So any other discussion before we move on to
Bless you.
Thank you.
making a motion? And do we need to read them all out, or just as we're, okay.
I make a motion to approve the calendar for meeting dates as presented in the board packet.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, any more discussion? This is not a roll call vote, I'm assuming? Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes.
Hooray.
Thank you. And the final item for discussion is the board budget and finance committee appointments. So the budget and finance committee is a subcommittee of this board that meets with the treasurer and the staff. And there's typically 3 people on it, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so the treasurer and 2 other people. It was the first position I held when I joined the board, and it's a great way to learn a lot about kind of the financial workings of the library and to help understand what you're getting in your packet every week. And I guess we would need 2 folks on that committee.
I just wanted to add about the time commitment, which is that it's not meeting regularly throughout the year. There's sort of like a chunk of time leading up to the budget, but it's like 4 meetings total a year, maybe?
Yeah, that's about right, and it's not like every week. And there's a meeting around the audit, there's a meeting around the budget, or a couple meetings around each. But it's kind of, so you go a deeper dive on the budget before it's presented to the board and discussed at the board and approved, and then you also have a conversation with the auditors. And the treasurer actually has more interaction beyond that, but the committee just meets. And then the staff will often bring conversations to okay, how should we talk about this or present this or think about this, or this is what we're expecting, but we're not sure yet, and this is what's happening. So there's just a deeper dive into what's going on in the process. So is this something where we nominate and vote for people, or is this something people can kind of volunteer for? What's the process for the?
You make the appointments, and I actually, technically, I don't think we have to approve them. I think you can make
Okay,
the
so the
appointments.
president just like makes.
That's
the-
all. It's always been a little bit of gray
Okay.
area in the process. So I think we have in the past voted to approve your appointments or the president's appointments.
That's what I recall, is that we have done that in the
Yeah.
past. And I recall there being discussion that we weren't certain that it was required.
Yeah,
Just
it's
sort of,
always seems
covering
strange to
our
me that
bases.
it's an appointment that you would have to nominate and vote for, because if it's an appointment, then you just make it. But, we always like to cross our T's and dot our I's.
Yes, so we'll make some appointments. So is there any interest in joining?
To the very new people.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Okay.
I would be eager as well.
Okay, great. All right, so then how does it go? I would appoint Trustee Silva and Hadley to the committee, and then we would have a vote individually or together. Make sure we're doing this correctly, or as correctly as we can, to make sure we're overdoing it if not underdoing it.
Are you looking at bylaws, Karen?
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I would love to resolve this question after 8 years.
Noted.
But I think maybe we should just vote on it to be absolutely sure. So I guess I would make a motion to support those appointments.
Seconded.
Okay, and we'll do voice vote. While we wait to hear.
can do
All right, so
whatever we want, 'cause we're-
all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So we have a Budget and Finance Committee.
Hooray.
All right, so we are back for citizens' comments. Have we received any comments during the meeting?
Let me
And
just
any?
check YouTube. Nope.
Okay.
And let me check the email. Nope.
Okay, thank you. And that means we are adjourned. Thank you all.